Neil deGrasse Tyson, an American astrophysicist, cosmologist, planetary scientist, author, and science communicator. He is currently the director of the Hayden Planetarium at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, and he gives one of the most eye-opening interviews you will ever hear. This video contains some of the best advice anyone can possibly give to live a successful life, so make sure to watch until the end. Also, please like and subscribe as it really helps me grow. And now let's begin. We often think that people at the top of their game have always had it easy, and that's what allowed them to become successful. But in this interview with Oprah, Neil shares the harsh reality of life as a black man in America. Growing up, my heroes were white and my villains were white. It wasn't until I was well into adulthood that I realized that my heroes weren't really my heroes. They were just people who had overcome more obstacles than I had. The idea that somebody could be born into circumstances that are so disadvantageous, so unpropitious, so uncorrelated with success, and actually rise above those circumstances, that's what I admire. That's why they're my heroes. Because they did it despite the odds rather than because of the odds. And I think if you understand that about your heroes, you realize that you too can become a hero in your own story. If you come from difficult circumstances, you should not see that as a limitation. You should see that as fuel. What does it mean to go from there to here? That question right there is powerful enough to drive you for decades, and you don't need anybody to tell you to work hard. You can do it simply because you're curious. What does it mean to go from there to here? It's easy to feel sorry for yourself. Look at me. I have to deal with this. Why did this happen to me? But if you adopt that victim mentality, then you're going to spend your whole life feeling sorry for yourself. Instead, what we should do is take responsibility for our destiny. We've heard it said that we are the sum of our choices. Well, if that's true, then what are you doing to add up to something great? Take responsibility for your choices. We can talk about systemic issues, we can talk about biases, we can talk about discrimination, but you can only control your choices. And if you make good choices, I promise you, no matter what obstacles stand in your way, you will get through. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Don't blame other people. Look within and say, how am I contributing to the problem? How can I do better? Only when you take responsibility for your destiny can you move forward. If I tell you the average age of the universe is 13.8 billion years, it doesn't mean anything to you. It sounds impressive. It sounds impressive. If I said the sun is 400 billion miles away, it doesn't mean anything to you. You don't know what that means. But if you relate it to things that you do know, all of a sudden, it becomes meaningful. The distance from New York to Los Angeles is about 2,500 miles. The sun is 400 billion miles away. It's 160,000 times farther away than New York to Los Angeles. All of a sudden you got a mental picture of how far away the sun is. Numbers don't mean anything. It's the story that imbues the numbers with meaning. And so when I present science, I try to always find the story behind the science. What's the story that makes this relevant to people's lives? Because if you can connect the science to the story, then the science becomes part of the story. Then it lives in your head rent-free forever. I thought that being a scientist meant that you had to be super smart. But it turns out that being a scientist isn't about being super smart. It's about being deeply curious. There's a difference between being curious and being smart. Curiosity is what drives science. Being smart helps you do science, but it's curiosity that propels you. If you have unlimited curiosity, then you can become a scientist. And yes, you need some aptitude. You have to have a certain minimum level of intelligence to do well in school. And in America, we have these entrance exams that you have to take to get into graduate school. You know, the GRE, the GM, ATLSAT, MCAT. These tests measure a sort of generic type of intelligence that is necessary to do well in school. It's not necessarily the same thing as scientific thinking. Scientific thinking comes from deep curiosity. Generic intelligence comes from studying for exams, and that's different from being curious. Curiosity says, why is that the way it is? Intelligence says, that's the way it is. So keep your curiosity high and your intelligence up to snuff. And you can be a scientist. There are two types of people in the world. There are people who say it's not possible, and there are people who say, how do we make it happen? If you want to change the world, surround yourself with people who say, how do we make it happen? It's very easy for people who've never done anything themselves to sit back and say, oh, that's never gonna work. That's stupid. What an idiot. Only people who have never tried to do anything themselves are willing to bet 100% that it won't work. People who have tried a few things are a little bit more circumspect. They might say, well, I don't think that'll work, but maybe I am wrong, and then you can point to examples where people were told it wouldn't work, and then they proved those naysayers wrong. There's no such thing as a bad idea. There's a bad execution of a good idea. If you have an idea, just go for it. If it fails, you learn something. Now you have data. What worked and what didn't work. And that's the stuff of progress. You shouldn't feel alienated by complexity. The universe is complicated, and it should be celebrated that we live in a time where we understand some of that complexity. We used to think the sun went around the earth. That was geocentric. And then we said, no, the earth goes around the sun. That's heliocentric. And then we said, actually, it's even more complicated than that. The sun goes around the center of mass of the Earth and the sun. And then we said, actually, it's even more complicated than that. The sun and the planets go around the galaxy's center of mass. And then we said, actually, it's even more complicated than that. Every body in the universe goes around the center of mass of every other body in the universe. That's Newton's version of gravity. And then we said, no, it's even more complicated than that. There's this thing called dark matter that we can't see or detect directly, but its gravitational pull makes the universe do things that Newtonian gravity doesn't explain. And we're working on figuring out what that is. The point is, the more we learn about the universe, the more complicated it turns out to be. And each new layer of complexity reveals the richness of the universe, the ingenuity of the laws that govern it, and we get to participate in understanding those laws. So don't feel alienated by complexity. Celebrate it. So many young people today are looking for shortcuts. They don't want to work hard. They want everything handed to them. Here's a little secret. Work ethic is the great equalizer. There's a lot of talented people out there, but talent alone doesn't guarantee success. If you have talent and you work hard, there's nothing in life that you can't achieve. Nothing. So forget about shortcuts. Forget about luck. Forget about being handed things. Work hard. I promise you, if you work hard, you can achieve anything. Many of us waste a lot of time worrying about what other people think about us. Neil says that worrying about what others think about us is one of the fastest ways to ruin your life. Stop worrying about what others think about you. Let me say it again. Stop worrying about what others think about you. And here's why. If you're worried about what others think about you, it means that you're measuring yourself by their standards. And if you're doing that, then you're not living your life. You're living their life. And if you do that, you're going to spend your whole life trying to meet expectations that aren't even yours. You will never be true to yourself. You will never find happiness. You will never find peace. You must stop worrying about what others think about you. If you do that, you're going to live a much happier, more fulfilling life. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment below what you learned. And if you want to learn more about how to become successful in life, check out the playlist in the description. Thanks for watching.